Hey, how's it going everyone? It is Online here, welcome back to another video course as always. Today I really wanted to talk about the Avengers beta. I got to play it this past weekend and wanted to give my thoughts on the game as I've been pretty critical of everything that we've seen up until now. From the initial reveal to the war tables that we've gotten. The game just has looked rather to me. Like, I felt like I really wanted to play the game in order to finally understand what this game was, because what the game looked visually didn't look that good at all. So let's go into it. So I want to start with the contents of the beta, because this beta actually has a lot more going to it than I actually thought. I wasn't really paying attention too much to this game up until the beta. I really wanted to just play it for myself before I kind of really looked at it anymore. And yeah, the beta consists of 2 story missions. You get the A-Day mission, which is how they initially revealed the game back at E3. That big, kind of set piece where you get to play as all the Avengers for a brief period of time. The game later goes into a mission later on in the game where Kamala meets up with Hulk, and then you guys have to go to this AIM research lab in the Pacific Forest, which is really interesting. That mission's pretty fun as well. After that, the beta kind of opens up, gives you a little bit of taste of like what the day-to-day life will be when you boot up this game. You'll have access to a bunch of drop zone, war zones, and some hard missions as well. I guess to give a brief synopsis before I go into like specifics, I will say the game is pretty fun and satisfying to play, but then again, this game also doesn't really do anything too special. It feels rather like it's trying to be a lot at once. I'll go into it when I talk about how each Avenger plays and overall the gameplay as well as the presentation, but nothing really becomes memorable. So let's start with A-Day. So A-Day is obviously this big set piece like mission, which I hope there are a lot in the campaign. There's a lot of war zones and drop zones we've seen, but we've only really seen A-Day in terms of like that big bombastic kind of AAA quality mission where it's like pretty much playing an Avengers movie, Yeah, you get to play as all the Avengers. You will get to play as more Avengers in this mission than you actually do in the beta as a whole. So characters like Thor and Captain America you could play as in this, but you can't play as them outside of A-Day. It's funny that they keep trying to reinforce into your head that Captain America dies in that mission, because when you get to play as him for a brief period of time, for about a few minutes, his combo move is really well structured. Obviously, he's kind of built just as much as the other Avengers, and then they expect you to think that, oh yeah, we just killed him off after spending so much time on his moveset. So I fully expect to be able to recruit him and find out that he lived towards being like an experiment by AIM or some shit like that towards the end of the game's campaign. In terms of my favorites, I will say that the mission doesn't really do a really good job of kind of showing the character's strengths. Like when you play as Iron Man, a lot of it is in like the air and combat. And yeah, that's probably like the best way to show him in a set piece, kind of like traditional what Iron Man would be doing in like a Marvel movie. But when you get to play as Iron Man in like specific missions and having full control of him, he's way better than that initial mission leads you to believe. So what A-Day really reinforces into your head, at least it did to me, is all these Avengers play the same generally. The game plays it kind of safe in that if you pick a certain Avenger for a mission, you're going to be able to do the mission successfully. It's not going to be like you're going to be hitting a brick wall. All of them are built pretty much the same. They all have like a ranged move that you can hold L2 and spray with R2. They all have, essentially ways to get around. With Iron Man and Thor, that might be hovering in the air and flying, which is probably the biggest difference in terms of the characters. But then, characters like Black Widow can pull themselves up and towards enemies with their grapple, as well as Kamala Khan's really flexible and she can leap really far distances. There are some differences there, but other than that, they all have the same traditional melee moves. They all have the traditional, smash square. To hit enemies, hold triangle to break through shields. It's like the same across the board. All of them can functionally do most of the same stuff, and they specialize in different areas, which is, in my opinion, it's smart of them, but it also kind of plays it too safe, so that really if you're like all strategizing as a team and you have to pick a different Avenger, you're still going to be able to do just as much as they can, for the most part at least. Yeah, the mission overall is pretty good. I feel like this game looks a lot better in motion graphically. A lot of people like to rip on the, character looks and say they're kind of knockoff MCU heroes, but honestly, when you see the game in motion, it looks a lot better than what the screenshots do, as well as just by the time you're done with the beta, I feel like you kind of understand what this game's trying to do. These characters are kind of like their own thing, more focused on the characters in the comic than, trying to rip something straight out of the MCU. Especially when you look at all the costumes, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we did get some kind of like MCU kind of like costume, because there are so many cosmetics in this game that I just feel like down the road they have to do that. But yeah, 8 is pretty cool. It's very fun from like a mission perspective, because like a lot goes on. You're constantly swapping from character to character in these big set piece moments, which I'm sure was hell to make. You get to fight Taskmaster as Black Widow. Taskmaster was a pretty easy boss fight. It is really cool when you beat him up and all that shit like that, but it was pretty easy at the same time. I just really hope there's more missions like that, honestly. So yeah, going into overall the whole beta, you get to play as Hulk, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Miss Marvel, aka Kamala Khan. All 4 of those characters are the ones that are available in this beta. See, I don't want to make it seem like I'm too negative on this game, because the thing is, this game was pretty fun. Like, I played the beta for a good 4 to 5 hours. You know, I still want to play some more right now, because the game is very satisfying to play. I personally main Iron Man. I feel like he could do a lot at once. You can easily approach enemies quickly, obviously given your suit and the fact that you can, you know, shoot enemies up in the air, take them on, you know, melee combat up in the air, and just fly around is pretty good. Not to mention all your projectiles, including your repulsors, your lasers, your rockets. I feel like he has a lot going for him. Yeah, the game is fun, as I said. Like, I enjoyed it a lot. I can't wait to play more of it. I'm going to be picking it up day 1, just because I feel like there's nothing else coming out in September, and, you know, you want to have a good Avengers game. Like, no one really wants to knock on this game, because I feel like a lot of people really want to have a good Avengers game. You see this big Avengers property, and you're kind of surprised that we don't have a game like this. You know, some people might see this and obviously think, oh, I wish this was a 12-hour cinematic, you know, adventure campaign, you know, including the adventures that you'd get the quality of something like the MCU. Other people are really happy that it's like a Destiny-like world where the game will be updated over time. Personally, I'm fine with the direction it is. I do have some cons against things like the loot and all that, but the fact that you could just pick up this game one weekend with your friends and, you know, have new content to play is really cool, especially considering that the free content down the road is free. I will touch on the microtransactions in a bit, because they are really fucking annoying, as well as, you know, all the exclusivity deals that seems to be going on. So yeah, as I said, Iron Man was a big standout for me. I also really liked Kamala Khan. She is a little weak in terms of like targeting enemies in the air, because I feel like a lot of characters, it's kind of that traditional game, kind of reminds me of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, where you're kind of just mashing square and hoping it hits in a way. You know, there's going to be times where there's like a dozen characters surrounding you and you're just kind of mashing square hoping it's locking onto the right one. That really gets annoying in games, and it's still here in this game, but I guess that's just part of the combat. Yeah, moving past the gameplay, because there is a bit more to the gameplay. I feel like a lot of people see this game and they think it's the traditional press square, hold triangle, press triangle. There's an ultimate ability. There is quite a bit there. I mean, they gave us 1 out of the 3 skill trees for each Avenger, and there's a lot that can be unlocked and change the playstyle. Like Iron Man, for instance, if you're looking at the gameplay, it looks pretty, you know, generic, but then you realize that all his upgrades kind of unlock different kind of projectiles in his suit. So you start off with the repulsors, but you unlock the lasers, you unlock the rockets, and knowing when to use each one in a boss battle or in a combat room full of like 20 enemies. Once you master that down and actually know how to fill that up with like melee combat combos and all that, the game can be really fun. And I mean, it can look like a button smasher on paper, but I feel like once you actually play it, it is not. The beta heavily implies that the full game is going to want you to grind up and play these drop zone and war zones over and over again, and I gotta say, the environments get really, really repetitive. Even throughout the course of the beta, I was kind of getting tired of the environments I was in, and they actually give you like quite a bit of the environments, like I think at least 2 or 3. Just the thing, in my opinion, is that there's just so many of these generic 5 to 10 minute missions where you just drop in, do a simple objective, and yeah, the gameplay's really fun, but I just see it really getting old fast, which is going to be something that I'm kind of going to be looking out for towards the full release. There is a main draw here for quite a bit of people, is going into these, you know, zones, probably in higher difficulties and trying to grind out for better gear. The gear so far is pretty generic. My main complaint with the gear actually isn't the fact that it is, you know, invisible, because a lot of people don't like the idea that you're equipping gear that you don't see on your character, something akin to like Destiny would. But in my opinion, like when I was playing Destiny and I was equipping all these gear, you're always putting on the numbers that are the highest, not what looks the best. So you could be playing with the best gear that you have for a certain mission in Destiny, but you'll look absolutely weird. You'll be mixing and matching a bunch of color schemes that don't work. You'll just look like trash, honestly. So in that opinion, I'm kind of glad the skins are kind of simple, that you just apply a cosmetic skin, just as simple as that. And just keep the gear, I guess, for the people that really care about it. And speaking of the gear, I was a little bit harsh on it in the beginning. I even tweeted about it, saying the gear is kind of dumb. I'm guessing it might get better towards the later difficulties. What I really want is a better tutorial, because the game kind of just drops you in with all this gear and kind of expects you to be like a year 3 Destiny player or play Diablo consistently before you play Marvel's Avengers. You know, I'm kind of exaggerating there, but it does drop you in the deep end quite a bit and doesn't really explain to you, you know, what it should, honestly, in my opinion. Yeah, besides that, I really want to talk about the stuff that's surrounding this game, because arguably I think that's being talked about more than the game itself. The game absolutely has a lot of microtransactions that will no doubt take place at launch. Each character has sort of like a battle pass, I guess that's the best way to describe it. You have like 40 tiers for each Avenger, and in my opinion that's a really shitty way to do it because they lock it behind daily and weekly missions, which I'm totally fine for daily and weekly missions to exist, but if I want to progress an Avenger like cosmetically like that, and I want to play a lot for like a certain night, let's say I can't play the next day, let's say I work the next day, I kind of hate how they kind of restrict progression because they want you to boot up the game every day and treat it like a job. I absolutely hate that shit. You know, it's fine if you have daily and weekly missions in these games as a service, but limiting progression for that, especially when you could buy it because there's a buying currency there that you could just buy your way through the end, which a big part of these games, in my opinion, is actually looking cool because you earned it. Just knowing someone else could just spend 40 bucks or something like that to buy it all really is shitty. Not to mention everything around Spider-Man. A big part of this game, or pretty much the whole part of this game, is all these characters playing the way they play and the fun that comes out with that with friends. And just knowing that Spider-Man's gonna be locked behind a Sony platform really is shitty, especially when this game hasn't even come out yet and it's promising to be here for like the years to come. That just wasn't a good move in my opinion. You know, obviously you know why they did it, because of money, but it's really frustrating. And then you look online and you see all these cosmetic packs that are being sold behind exclusive gun packs and all that, and yeah man, Square Enix, I don't know what you're doing here, but I hope it stops because you're just kind of driving me further and further away with every stunt that's being pulled in terms of this game's marketing and future plans. So those are my thoughts on Marvel's Avengers. I didn't think I had a lot to say on this, but then I look and it's been over 10 minutes, so damn. Yeah, the game has a decent foundation going for it, but the game has a lot of issues, and honestly, I used to be kind of lenient on a lot of the shit that gets pulled in games as a service, but I've kind of gotten tired of it, so I really feel the need to speak my mind, especially on an iconic IP being used like this. So yeah, again, I feel like I can't really give you some sort of verdict on this because the beta is going to be open for everyone on PC, PS4, and Xbox One in the weeks to come. I believe the beta is going out through all of August. For me, what sold me on this game was just how dumb and fun this game felt to play. I feel like I'll play this with my friends akin to like a Destiny, kind of like, you know what I mean? Just boot it up as a fun co-op game, so would recommend to boot it up. I feel like a lot of people will be surprised when this goes in open beta because the game is a lot more fun than I thought, so not all negative here. The game is pretty good. I am enjoying it, and I am going to be picking it up day one, but the stuff that needs to be fixed really needs to be fixed, and just know that the game isn't entirely... The game's pretty much spreading itself too thin in my opinion. So yeah, that has been my thoughts on Marvel's Avengers. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. If you had a chance to play the beta this weekend, and if not, the open beta is coming in the weeks to come. I've been Online or Brandon. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if this is the first video of mine you are seeing. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for all the goodness like that and updates to the channel. Until I see you in the next video, take care.